Hi, I'm Dr. Padilla. I'm a professor in computer science and psychology, and I've been a professor for over 5 years now. Today, I wanted to update a video that I made last year about how to contact professors for PhD applications. You might be thinking about applying for a PhD, and you need to figure out who you want to contact and how to contact them the right way in order to see if they have open positions for PhD applicants, okay? So definitely check out that video if you're interested in that topic. I wanna give you an update for 2025. The academic landscape has changed a little bit, so I wanted to give you my updated advice for how to contact professors when applying for PhD programs. So let's jump on in. Okay, so I'm just gonna summarize the main points from the previous video. The previous video includes a template, so if you want full detail, definitely check that out. The major take home from that video is to avoid using ChatGPT. ChatGPT tends to make a particular type of template for contacting professors that professors are allergic to. We have seen so much ChatGPT, so many homework assignments, etc. We can see it a million miles away. So do not use ChatGPT. Write it yourself. People want to know about you. You are special and unique, and we want to hear your voice. So it'll definitely stand out if you are writing from your own perspective and not relying on large language models to construct those emails. The other major point I made in that video is that you should not use a form letter. In particular, what you want to do is you want to illustrate a sincere personal interest in someone's research, and it's really hard to do that in a form letter. Usually what happens is professors see dozens of identical emails come in that are basically a form letter, where it says, "Dear professor, I'm interested in your research. Here's my background. I hear you do topic blank and blank, and I want to know if you have openings," that type of thing. Do not do this. What you want to do is you want to introduce yourself, give brief details that are relevant to your research, include your CV so that they can see the background that you have, but more importantly, express an interest in that particular professor's research or line of inquiry. This involves citing a paper that you thought was particularly interesting, describing what you found fascinating or how it sparked particular ideas or how you'd like to delve more into that particular topic. That's showing that you care about their research in particular and you're committed to engaging in this process. That cannot happen in a form letter, so just avoid those entirely. Okay, so let's get into the updates for 2025. What is new from previous years? Well, lots of things have changed in the world of academia, particularly in the US. I'm going to caveat and say that this advice is particularly for emailing professors in the United States, okay? So in the United States, we have had a whole reworking of funding in academia. So what's going to happen is that each individual PhD position is going to be so much more competitive. So there's a few things you might consider doing when you're emailing professors that might make it more likely for them to respond to your email. So the first thing that you might consider including is if you are a US resident. That is unfortunate, but it is the reality of the situation. If you're not a US resident, you don't need to mention it per se. But if you are a US resident and you're applying to a US school, that may give you a slight edge, in part because some funding mechanisms might be specifically for US residents, and oftentimes we're not going to ask people outrightly if they're a US resident, but if you divulge that information, that might give you a slight competitive edge. Likewise, if you have sorted out your visa situation, if you have a visa for the US, maybe from a previous job, etc., or have some pathway for that, definitely include that in that initial email. And what you can say is somewhere, in introducing yourself, describe yourself, describe your background and say, I'm currently a US resident, or I'm currently a X visa holder. That's all you have to say, okay? And I know this might be making people a little bit uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable thinking about it, frankly. But the truth is that it might be quite complicated to get visas moving forward. So if you already have that work done, or if you're a US resident, you might receive a little bit of priority treatment, okay? Now, that's not to say if you don't have those two things, you will not get in. That's not the case at all. But if you want to give yourself a leg up, that would be one of my recommendations for 2025. Now, another thing that I definitely think you should consider mentioning is if you have secured external funding. I think that sometimes students feel comfortable divulging this information in emails, but is so incredibly useful. So if you have funding because you applied for a grant and you received it, or if you have industry funding, for example, any type of funding for your PhD, if you have that secured, absolutely say that in the email. That's going to be one of the things that deters people from emailing you back, maybe because they don't have funding. So if you divulge that information in an email, you'll definitely be more likely to receive a email back. Now, along the same lines, if you applied for grants, also include that. That is basically illustrating that you are actively seeking funding, that you're not just going to wholly rely on your advisor, that you're going to participate in this process. You might not get the grants, you might not hear back for a long time about those grants, but if you applied for any grants, definitely include that, and it will definitely show some initiative in terms of securing funding for your PhD. And the last update for 2025 is to definitely work harder on using your network. As I've said in many videos now, everything is so much more competitive, and something that can definitely get you a competitive edge is if you have someone making an introduction for you in an email. So that's not cold emailing someone, that is getting someone that you know who knows the person that you're emailing, making that email connection. That is fantastic. Even if they're not willing to do that, ask them if you can reference their name when emailing this additional professor. So you might say, Professor X suggested that I reach out to you regarding a potential PhD application. I'd love to check to see if I might be a good fit for your lab and research. Okay, that alone, referencing someone else's name, is a great step. You have to make sure you actually have the go-ahead to do that, but the trick is to make more of those network connections and work really, really hard right now to find people that can connect you across the network. The reason I bring this up is that because spaces are so limited, you want to be considered a sure thing. One way to do that is to illustrate that people within that professor's network that you're applying to know you. They don't necessarily need to vouch for you, but you are already interconnected into that network. All right, those are my major updates for 2025. This is a wild time to be applying for a PhD, but I will say you should definitely do it. Just because it's very competitive doesn't mean that you're not gonna get one of those spots. Someone has to get one of those spots, so might as well be you. What I'm recommending in these videos are just ways to kind of give yourself a slight competitive edge, but please don't be discouraged by thinking it's so monumental or impossible. Someone's gonna get the spot, so might as well be you. If you found this video useful, definitely consider hitting the like button and subscribe for more content on academic success. I know academia can be tough, but you don't have to go through it alone. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.